The KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny skies throughout the weekend with highs in the low to mid 80s. Clouds move in next week with a chance of showers. Right now it's clear and 74. I'm Dale Spalding, KSL News Radio 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, from the moment that Senator Mitt Romney announced his plan to not run for re-election in 2024, the headlines have been sensational. What was Romney really like behind the scenes? Who did he talk to ahead of January 6th? What does he think of his Republican colleagues? Who will run to replace him? But lost in all of that speculation and juicy confessions is a set of very important principles that Senator Romney demonstrated yesterday when deciding not to run for re-election. So let's get beyond the headlines. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, as I said, from the moment the news broke yesterday that Senator Romney would not seek re-election, there's been all kinds of clickbait, sensational headlines surrounding that announcement. It set off all kinds of speculation about his comments regarding former and current presidents, evaluation of his time and impact in the United States Senate, and all kinds of prognostication about the next race to replace here in Utah. But lost in all of it was the real important principle of the day. So I'm going to ask you to put your personal politics relating to Senator Romney on the shelf for the next 8 minutes. Whether you love him, whether you don't like him, or anything in between, I just want you to set that aside for 8 minutes. And I want you to join me for an underneath all the headlines so we can explore something we all should be thinking about relating to every elected official. So let's start with part of the senator's announcement. He talked about his age as being part of the decision for not seeking re-election and said the most important thing in terms of what we should be looking for moving forward.
I've spent my last 25 years in public service of one kind or another. At the end of another term, I'd be in my mid-80s. Frankly, it's time for a new generation of leaders. They're the ones that need to make the decisions that will shape the world they will be living in.
A next generation of leaders. They need to be the ones to shape the world that they are going to live in and inherit. That's a really important statement from Senator Romney. Because I think what Senator Romney said, in essence, was I have confidence in the country. I have confidence in the American people. I have confidence in the citizens of Utah. If a little refrain of teach them how to say goodbye from George Washington and the music of Hamilton is playing in your head, you're probably on the right path. Washington understood, and yesterday Mitt Romney modeled what it means to recognize the fallacy in this country of the irreplaceable. We hear it all the time. George Washington was an extraordinary leader, among the greatest in all of human history. Following the Revolutionary War, he had access to absolute power. He could have been, and scores of Americans wanted him to be, the king. Many declared him the indispensable and irreplaceable man. Sadly, most men and women hearing those kinds of accolades of indispensability, they listen to that siren song, assume that it's a choir of angels, and then they begin to believe it and act on it. But George Washington knew better, and he rejected the throne of irreplaceability, and he set a standard of servant leadership and stewardship for everybody to follow. Now, I've mentioned this before, that when I was doing consulting work all around the world, I saw the fallacy of the irreplaceable all the time. In fact, when I would hear an executive say, oh, Mary is irreplaceable, or Steve is just absolutely indispensable, that was usually a red flag for me. It caused me to worry. It might be a big problem. I would respond to those kinds of statements from executives by asking, well, what would happen if Mary quit tomorrow? Or, heaven forbid, Steve tragically gets hit by a bus. This usually drew very nervous laughter and long moments of silence as the executives realized the fallacy, the risk, and irresponsibility of allowing someone to be absolutely irreplaceable. Now, this is not in any way, shape, or form to say that some people are harder to replace than others, or that for some people their absence would be very difficult for an organization to overcome. That just happens. That's okay. But the problem is the irreplaceable and that idea and that mindset that we have someone who is absolutely irreplaceable. It becomes a constraining force for innovation and growth, improvement within any kind of organization. It also inhibits the development of other leaders. So that creates a dependency culture, and in many instances, it undermines the mental muscle, the personal commitment of others inside an organization. I think that's part of what Senator Romney was saying yesterday, is if those who are currently in power don't step aside, nobody's going to emerge to replace them, and nobody's going to live forever. And it also creates this dependency culture, which is so problematic in our politics. And sadly, the American people have begun to buy into it. This idea of the indispensable leader syndrome. I regularly lament the fact that currently in the United States Congress, which only has an approval rating somewhere between 9 and 14%, 9 and 14% favorable rating, yet every election cycle, roughly 94% of incumbents are reelected. Those numbers don't match. But we buy into this irreplaceability factor. Oh, no, we can't let them go. We'd lose power. We'd lose influence. We'd lose positioning. And currently, despite the prospect of a repeat Biden-Trump presidential election in 2024, and of course the usual chants that come from whoever's in the minority, drain the swamp, the status quo has regularly been maintained in the U.S. House and Senate. Very few seats change hands, and even fewer changes take place in the leadership for either political party. Now, I think Senator Romney passed the true test of leadership yesterday, especially of political leadership. I often see those running for re-election and maintaining that vice grip hold on power long after their used-by date in office has clearly expired. Again, those siren songs are hard to ignore when you start to believe that you're irreplaceable. And to be honest, it's really easy for a candidate to cast aspersions on the rest of Congress or their colleagues while convincing your own constituents they can't survive without you. You can vote for anyone you want, they say, but if you don't vote for me, you'll lose power. I'm irreplaceable. That kind of attitude fosters the belief that some kind of political savior is going to waltz in from Washington and fix all our problems, which, by the way, further weakens the nation as more and more citizens absolve themselves of personal responsibility. When you have an irreplaceable person, no one else is responsible for anything. And ultimately, guess where this ends? An imperial presidency with their political pals and pawns running and often ruining the nation. It never ends well for the citizens. A quick glance to Venezuela, Russia, North Korea, a host of other authoritarian regimes provide pretty good perspective where the, quote, irreplaceable leader turns strongman and transforms into a tyrannical dictator. We've seen the movie, folks. Everybody's replaceable. So if we begin to view political leaders in a different way, it changes everything. And to me, this is the key takeaway from what happened yesterday. If we as citizens begin to view political leaders as replaceable, they will be. And elections will become less consequential to our lives because we will make government less consequential in our lives. I've shared before that during my time in Washington, most nights ended with me walking through the Capitol Rotunda very late. And I'd always pause and spend a few moments gazing at that majestic painting of General Washington resigning his commission. And I'm telling you, in the quiet and stillness of the empty rotunda, you can hear and you can sense and you can know the principles that made Washington an authentic and an extraordinary leader. So for any, and I would say every would-be leader, political or otherwise, Washington gives the right kind of study in what servant leadership, stewardship leadership really means. General George Washington resigning his commission before the Continental Congress on December 23rd of 1783 in, stunningly, one of the few instances in history that the commander of the conquering forces did not assume complete authority, control, and power. Instead, he returned it to the citizens and to their representatives. Something that Washington understood is that power is not something to be amassed, bartered with, or cling to. It's not a tool for pursuing political purposes and self-promotion. And while many proclaimed Washington to be indispensable and irreplaceable, Washington knew that the future of the nation wasn't dependent on him. He believed America's destiny would be secured down through the ages by citizens who would enter the world stage, make a contribution in their homes, communities, and country, and then travel on. It's individual Americans living and applying indispensable truths and irreplaceable principles that guarantee America will remain a nation indivisible. So everyone has a role to play, and everyone's important, and everyone is replaceable. Because it's not about politicians or political parties, it's about people and principles. Senator Romney showed in his decision to step aside so a new generation of leaders could rise, says something powerful and meaningful that I wish more in our nation's capital would follow. Senator Romney's ultimate statement that should give every American hope is that it isn't who leads us, but what leads us, what principles, what character traits, what hope. So, Senator Romney, thank you for your service. Thank you for the reminder that service to country is seasonal work. You come in for a season, you work hard, you deliver results, and you leave a legacy. And as George Washington demonstrated, you go home and make a difference somewhere else. No title or position of power required.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. 2024 is going to be wild.
While I'm not running for re-election, I'm not retiring from the fight.
The race for the White House, all 4 Utah House seats up for grabs, and now an open Senate seat.
Frankly, it's time for a new generation of leaders.
Listen all this week for the reaction, the fallout, and the road ahead. It will be your voice, your vote that decides, and we'll have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Embrace the majesty of the great outdoors and celebrate Bryce Canyon National Park's 100th birthday at Ruby's Inn. Skip the long lines and expensive hotel rooms and escape to the American West. Ride, hike, bike, and play among the towering hoodoos right in Ruby's backyard. Embrace your inner cowboy and take a guided horseback tour across the rim of Bryce Canyon. And no trip to Ruby's Inn is complete without dinner and a show at Ebenezer's Barn and Grill. After a long day of adventure, spend your nights in a cozy hotel room or camp out in a rustic campground. With affordable and varied lodging options, any family will feel right at home at Ruby's Inn. For some extra savings, be sure to take advantage of the hot deals running throughout the year. This year, treat your family to the adventure of a lifetime. Book your trip today at ruby'sinn.com. That's ruby'sinn.com.
Because we have had the Connecticut soft water system in our home for years and years, as a matter of fact, 2 different homes, I can tell you that it really is so much better than other water softeners, hands down. I love it because it makes a bag of salt last 3 times longer than the systems of competitors. It gives you wonderful, luxurious soft water you can count on 24/7. And when you're dealing with these folks, you're going to love. You'll find out that there are no nonsense, no loopholes, 10-year warranty. You feel like you've really found friends, and you find yourself really in softwater heaven. Kinetico of Utah. If your system doesn't sound like the one I just described, I want you to call Monty. I want you to call Steve. The great people, all of them there at Kinetico, will take care of you. 801-576-8600, or go online at softwaterutah.com.
The Utah RV Super Show, the premier RV event of the year, is back at Mountain America Expo, Thursday, September 14th through Sunday, September 17th. Come see the new 2024 models and special closeout pricing on all 2023 models. Bring a can of food for the Utah Food Bank and get $1 off per can, up to half off adult admission. Unplug from distractions and plug into your family at the Utah RV Super Show. Discount passes at UtahRVSupershow.com.
Here's a message just for the attorneys out there. So you passed the bar, joined a firm, or even built your own. Now are you finding out that you're doing more administration than actual law practice? Lexicon can help. Lexicon is a legal technology provider with over a decade of experience streamlining administrative tasks like timekeeping, billing, and more, so you can focus on maximizing billable hours and increasing client satisfaction. Call 855-4-LEXICON or visit lexiconservices.com/go to learn more.
Hey y'all, this is Ronte, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich is the pimento cheese. I was like, go cheese, go pimento, go honey, go get it.
Hi, this is Chantrice, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich is the mild spiciness of the pickled jalapenos. No, it's the crispy chicken. Actually, I can't decide. It's the entire sandwich.
Order the Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich on the Chick-fil-A app today. Available for a limited time. Real Chick-fil-A guests paid for their testimonials.
Join the Utah Symphony for the greatest classical hits from the 1700s to today. Tickets start at $21. Get yours today at utahsymphony.org.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dale Spalding. First, Hunter Biden has been indicted on 3 federal firearms charges. Second, police in Murray are currently looking for a man who they say fled a traffic stop and ran into a police car. Third, Utah Department of Agriculture and Food warns of a rise in livestock price scams. Right now it's clear and 74 in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Yesterday, former Vice President Mike Pence participated in a town hall in Chicago hosted by our friends over at News Nation. Mr. Pence used much of the town hall to position himself as the most experienced, consistent, and principled conservative in the race. That's clearly his lane. So we wanted to do a quick assessment. How'd he do? We're going to dive in a bit deeper into the policy positions and thinking of the former Vice President Mike Pence in this race. So we want to get, again, kind of past the headline kinds of things and some interesting areas that I think kind of emerged out of this town hall. One of the questions posed to former Vice President Pence was if Joe Biden, who was then vice president, gave him any advice going in about becoming the vice president. Here's what he said.
He did give me some advice. It was stay close to the president, build that relationship. And I will tell you, for all the faults of the Obama-Biden years, they had a good working relationship. And it didn't end the way I wanted it to, but I'm very proud of the relationship that I had with President Trump during our 4 years. And I believe that relationship contributed to the extraordinary accomplishments of our administration. I'll always be proud of the record of the Trump-Pence administration.
Really interesting. I thought Pence's comment about how well Joe Biden and Barack Obama had worked together was a good model, that he admired that. That's really interesting for someone who's served in that same role. I always find that kind of revealing and telling in terms of how one person who's been in a role looks at someone else who's about to fill that role. And I thought that was an interesting perspective coming from the former vice president. It was also interesting during Senator Romney's press conference yesterday. Was asked a number of questions about presidential candidates. He gave his opinion about the Pence campaign. And Senator Romney had mentioned that part of the Pence run was about his own legacy. And Mike Pence chose to respond to that in the town hall.
But when I looked at the range of experiences that I've had, and we concluded after much prayer and deliberation that I am in fact the most qualified, the most tested, the most consistent conservative running for the Republican nomination, I knew that we just had to step forward. I just couldn't sit this one out. I was raised to believe to whom much is given, much will be required. And we're stepping forward not to preserve some legacy, not to make some point, but because I believe that these ideals that I just talked about, these principles that have defined our movement, are the pathway forward to destroying our country.
So ideals, principles, and policies. I think regardless of how you feel about the former vice president, those are things that he is deeply connected to. It is where he spends the majority of his time thinking about, pondering, reflecting, how do we make this work? Mike Pence is one of the only GOP candidates really making our debt and deficit spending a major part of his campaign. Now, some say that's not really fun. It's like trying to sell broccoli while everyone else is giving away candy. But I think that's part of the seriousness of what Mike Pence brings to the campaign. So he said that his stance on the issue is primarily what sets him apart from other GOP candidates, including his former running mate.
We have a national debt the size of our nation's economy today, and it really threatens the economic vitality of our country for generations to come. And Joe Biden won't even talk about common sense and compassionate reforms to the entitlement programs that are driving most of that spending. And frankly, the former president has the exact same position as Joe Biden. Well, I believe that we owe it to future generations to put our fiscal house in order, to bring about the kind of reforms that will restore fiscal solvency. It's now, in a very real sense, what separates me from my former running mate, and it's much of what brings me to this race today.
So I think those are important components. Again, it's a tough sell. It is a tough sell to say, hey, we got to eat our broccoli and we have to pay for it while everyone else is just giving free candy out. And so the seriousness, I think, is important. And then this was also a telling moment. The former vice president was pressed about the Trump-Pence administrations, about their own excessive spending. And the former vice president didn't pull any punches as he reflected about the spending during his 4 years as the vice president.
People that know my record in Congress and as governor know I'm a pretty tight-fisted fiscal conservative. I think we could have done a better job controlling domestic spending in this country. Now, I stand by what we did to rebuild our military after years of reckless budget cutbacks under the Obama administration that were harming our military readiness and preparedness. And frankly, the money that we spent during COVID for families and for businesses to see us through the worst pandemic in 100 years, I thought was necessary. But in between those two things, I'll stipulate to that we could have done a better job.
All right. I think there are some lessons in there. So he stated his record, again, in the House, as a governor, as a fiscal conservative. And then he went through it, and I love this. You can actually answer a question. You can actually admit some mistakes, and you can point out differences and things that you would do different or things that you would do better. I don't know why this has become so hard for politicians. This is a good model. I think what the former vice president did, he said, look, I stand by the increases we had in military spending because there were years of decline and cuts that hollowed out a lot of the military. So he defended that part of his spending. He also defended the COVID spending, saying that was necessary to help families and to get through a 100-year pandemic. And then admitted, in between, we could have and should have done a much better job controlling domestic spending. So what's wrong with that answer? He defended the things that he thought were the right things to spend money on and accrue debt. We have to be honest, that's what it does. And he said, look, this is the area where we got to do better and have to do different. So I think that's an important part of the process. And then finally, on another policy issue, Mike Pence often highlights border policies of his time in office, but added something more when he was asked about the country's immigration situation. He admitted the system's badly broken, but he proposed some solutions, policy and principle-based. Here's what he said.
Look, we have a broken immigration system in this country. We have a broken border, but we also have a broken immigration system. If I'm president of the United States, I'm going to go to the American people, I'm going to go to the Congress and say we need a merit-based immigration system in this country that literally says what are the needs in the economy here in Illinois? What are the needs of the economy in Indiana, in Iowa, everywhere around America? And then open the doors of our country to people to come in legally that want to come here and work in those professions, in the city and on the farm that we need them to work.
So that's, again, former Vice President Mike Pence at a town hall in Chicago conducted by our friends over at News Nation. I found this to be a very instructive town hall. Sometimes the town halls just turn into a series of campaign slogans. I thought this was a serious conversation. One of the things that I've always appreciated about the former vice president, having interviewed him a couple of times now, is that he does want to get to the principle and policy stuff. And sometimes on the campaign trail, it's hard to sell. But I do applaud the vice president for answering the hard questions about his administration, his time in office, and talking about the things he would do differently as it relates to how he would differentiate from the other candidates. So it's a serious-minded approach in the former Vice President Mike Pence, but he does have something to say. He does have a message to share. He is part of an important conversation. Whether he gets the nomination or not, we'll continue to watch and see. We'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dale Spalding. KSL's top story this hour: almost half of Americans are finding it hard to believe that the Justice Department is handling its investigation into Hunter Biden in a fair and nonpartisan way. That's according to a poll by the Associate Press Center for Public Affairs Research. And 1 in 3 Americans are highly concerned about whether President Joe Biden was involved in his son's dealings. The poll was done just before House Speaker Kevin McCarthy launched a formal impeachment inquiry into the president's involvement. 2 agencies overseeing the Great Salt Lake want new mineral extractors to put back all the water they use. Division of Water Quality Director John Mackey says this could save a lot of water the lake can't afford to lose anymore.
I mean, these are hundreds of thousands of acre feet. Those are really, really big quantities. Those are not quantities that you can make up.
Mackey says this rule, once it's in place, would target new companies, not those who've been operating on the lake previously. The goal of this is to help companies get the minerals they want while not evaporating any more of the still ailing lake levels. Mark Dickey, the American cave explorer stuck for 12 days, is recovering in a Turkish hospital. A rescue team began an evacuation last week, getting him to the surface September 12th. The 40-year-old New Jersey native telling ABC News it was touch and go before rescue arrived.
I got pretty tight at the end there that I could tell that I was pretty close to fading. But what am I telling myself? You just keep surviving, and every moment is another moment they're going to get back with the necessary medical supplies.
Your money at this moment: the Dow is up 341 points, and NASDAQ is also up at 111 points. Coming up, the rest of the work week will be nice outside. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
They say you slow down as you get older, and it's true. But taking life a little slower here at Summit Vista has been incredibly rewarding. At my age, I know what I like, and it's all here. They call this a life plan community, and I'm liking the concept. I've always been a practical person, and now it's time to treat myself. At Summit Vista, I have a beautiful apartment. It's spacious and contemporary. It feels like me. I have all the independence I want, no more maintenance headaches, no more days spent cleaning. I eat delicious meals with my friends. The staff here feels like family. The socializing and amenities are endless. Frankly, anyone who says luxury living is overrated hasn't been to Summit Vista. I've rebooted my life, and I'm revisiting my younger self with the wisdom of an older woman. And I gotta tell you, feels pretty cool.
Experience retirement living at the top. Visit summitvista.com today.
Imagine how inconvenient your life would be without power. No lights, no refrigeration, no heating or cooling, and no electronics. But with a Generac home standby generator, you'll have the power when you need it most. Generac generators automatically provide backup after sensing a power outage, so your life goes on uninterrupted. Schedule a free quote today with Genco Generators, your premier Generac service dealer in Utah. Call 801-295-0872 or online at gencogenerators.net.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors to tell you about our 10-year everything guarantee. Most contractors spout off having great warranties that last forever. But those warranties are always, and I do mean always, riddled with loopholes, exception, fine print, and nonsense. At RGS Exteriors, we cover everything: parts, labor, material, everything and anything for 10 full years. There's no cost to you whatsoever, no hoops to jump through, no exceptions. Yes, the products we sell, like James Hardie siding, our windows, gutter covers, come with a 25 to 50-year manufacturer's warranty, just like everybody else. But the truth is, the products almost never fail. It's always the labor and material which is never covered, so you're stuck paying for service calls. For peace of mind, call RGS Exteriors. You'll sleep easy for 10 full years. 801-280-3110 or visit us at rgsutah.com. That's 801-280-3110 or online rgsutah.com. Gutters, siding, windows, and all exteriors with the 10-year everything guarantee.
Made to Shine. Real stories from Shane Company customers.
They were all there. My grandparents, all the cousins. I was the first one in my family to graduate from college. They were so proud. After the ceremony, my mom gave me a necklace with my birthstone. I wear it every day. Sometimes I even think it carries a secret superpower, that when I wear it, everything will be okay.
We carry the widest selection of handcrafted jewelry made to help everybody shine bright. Shane Company. Fine jewelry since 1929.
Found your dream house, but not your dream rate? Make your purchase with a home loan from Cypress Credit Union. Refinance within 12 months if rates drop, and Cypress Credit Union will take care of the refinancing fees.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
Freeway traffic rolling along, but in Davis County, we have a crash with injuries in the Syracuse area. Antelope Drive at 3300 West. Is your car due for some extra love? Burt Brothers is here for your vehicle's routine maintenance, all done by our ASC certified technicians. Burt Brothers, affordable, complete auto care done better. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Your KSL weather: sunny skies throughout the weekend with highs in the low to mid 80s. Clouds move in next week with a chance of showers. Right now it's clear and 75. I'm Dale Spalding, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, this week, the reclusive North Korean leader Kim Jong-un left the country for the first time since the pandemic to go to Moscow for what some dubbed as the Pariah Summit, or as the last bastion for authoritarian regime summit with Vladimir Putin. But we want to get beyond just the headlines of all of that. We want to get to what came out of this meeting. Many thought there'd be an arms deal. So far, nothing has been announced. Not sure what's happening otherwise. We also want to look at what commitments were made, and more important, the public statements that we do know about. What do they actually tell us about the future relationship between these two countries, and how does that impact everything from what's going on in Ukraine to everything else happening around the world? And helping us do this once again, so happy to have back on the show Anthony Ruggiero, a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and director of their Non-Proliferation and Biodefense Program. Anthony, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You have great perspective and have followed all of this. Give us kind of a high-level view first in terms of what did this summit actually mean? What were the real optics and messaging coming out?
Well, you said it perfectly. You know, Kim Jong-un leaving his country really for the first time since the pandemic. That's a big news story. Russia and North Korea have been allies for many decades, but now in the last year or so, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, North Korea is now joining the side. If you're picking sides, on one side is Ukraine and the United States and U.S. partners and allies, and on the other side is sort of what we call the rogue states, right? China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. So that's really the big picture look at it.
Yeah, and so let's unpack it all just a little bit in terms of what was said after at the conclusion of the summit. What did you glean from that?
I think the question going into the summit was always what is North Korea going to get in return? Because I think we knew what Russia wanted. They want a flow of arms, artillery, ammunition, anything else that Russia might use or need for their war, either as a stopgap for their own industrial capability or just because it's openly available. But what we learned is that what North Korea, at least initially, is getting in return is that Russia is going to help North Korea with launching military reconnaissance satellites. The meeting took place in a cosmodrome, so Russia was able to show off some of its capabilities in the space area. That is actually something that, even though North Korea has done multiple missile tests and set records in how many missiles they launch, the one area they have been struggling with really since 1998 is putting a satellite into our orbit that will stay there, and I think this relationship will help them get to that point.
Yeah, and we know that the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov was signaling kind of the message around the sanctions, the UN sanctions in particular, and how this wasn't a violation of those. Kind of break that down for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's wrong. He's wrong. I mean, I guess I should be more diplomatic, but the sanctions, very clearly prohibit this kind of activity. It's not even really a question. Like in some instances, you can have a conversation over whether a certain item is dual use, can be used for civilian or military affairs. The UN Security Council, which Russia is a permanent member of, voted for these resolutions many years ago. It prohibits this kind of training and guidance and other things. The reason it prohibits it is because space launch vehicles or launching satellites is a way to further a ballistic missile program, and so you want to cap that off. And the Russians are just trying to find an excuse so that people don't say that they're violating the sanctions. But I think in a room somewhere in private, they know that they are, and frankly, they probably don't care.
Yeah, and so give us some sense too. Obviously, North Korea has been struggling economically and even from a food insecurity following the pandemic. Anything or any nuances there coming out of this summit in terms of some additional help for North Korea on that front?
The one thing I should also mention is that there are some suggestions now that Putin has accepted an invitation to go to North Korea, so that could be quite interesting too. And the food situation in North Korea is certainly dire, but it's a man-made crisis. North Korea makes billions of dollars in their illicit activities and other things that they do, and none of that money goes to the North Korean people. None of that money goes to the economy. None of that money goes to better agricultural procedures and practices. That money goes, and you can see it in Kim and his crew. It goes to buying luxury goods for them, luxury vehicles, luxury food. It goes to the missile program and the nuclear program. It does not go to the North Korean people. Now, even having said that, there are many organizations that are interested in helping the North Korean people. The challenge, of course, is that the North Koreans don't want all of that going to the North Korean people. They want to siphon some of that off. So it's always this push and pull with wanting to help people who need the help, but with a regime that is essentially standing in the way of that.
Yeah, and so as we look at influence moving forward, obviously these two, Russia and North Korea, again, kind of the pariah gang, don't have a lot to lose at this point on the world stage in terms of how they're viewed. So it seems like they are saying, well, we'll just keep banding together because that works. But what else should we be watching for as this progresses, and what else gives you concern with the way it's progressing?
Yeah, the thing that always worries me is, when countries say we're going to cooperate on X, and in this case, X is, seemingly, why shouldn't North Korea have satellites. But to me, that's a proliferation pathway. In other words, you're going to have scientists working with each other much more closely, Russian and North Korean scientists, probably both in Russia and in North Korea. And obviously Russia's nuclear and missile program is far more advanced than North Korea's, even though North Korea's is advanced as well. But I think that's the thing that gives me the most concern, is that one of the consequences of this war in Ukraine could be North Korea's program getting even more advanced than it is now, which is certainly more dangerous, and it's targeted right at the United States. So, yet again, this is another reason why the war in Ukraine directly affects the American people.
Yeah, I'm so glad you pointed that out, because it's so easy to box these off or isolate these into little silos. This is a very interconnected world, and Ukraine is a very interconnected war. And this is one other thing where a possible advancement in North Korea nuclear capability could be a part of that. And again, this alliance between Russia and North Korea is also one that won't just impact Ukraine, but it will impact all of us all around the world. Anthony, thanks so much for joining us. As always, Anthony's a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's director of their Non-Proliferation and Biodefense program. Always appreciate your perspective on this, Anthony. Great insight.
Thanks for having me.
Great stuff there from Anthony Ruggiero. So complicated, so interconnected. The more you dig in, the more you find, wow, there are so many tentacles that go out through all of this as it relates to North Korea and Russia. And it does impact all of us, even right here at home. We'll be right back.
It's about to get real for the BYU Cougars.
Get to the end zone, touchdown!
This Saturday, the Cougs take on Arkansas from the powerhouse SEC Conference. Our special extended pregame coverage starts at noon with kickoff at 5:30 on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars. KSL News Radio.
Hey guys, do you know what makes Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City different? You. Every Revive treatment and medication is personalized just for you. Revive has the experts that guys go to when their current treatment isn't working. They have a complicated medical condition, or they're just not happy with their daily performance. Since 2011, they've helped thousands of local men suffering with the symptoms of low T and ED. Their goal is simple: to get to the bottom of your issues and fix them. Your best performance requires more than generic ED medications or a low-dose testosterone booster at a low-ball price like you find online. Revive medications are custom compounded, affordable, and guaranteed to resolve your issues. Stop dealing with the symptoms of low T or ED. Book your T-check and exam today. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit us at ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you know that these days, generating growth is a challenge. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll not just stay ahead of the curve, you'll move it. With access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2023 Bank of America, N.A.
Nothing slows my little girl down, except the stuffy nose.
Mommy.
That's why I use Sinex Children's Saline from Vicks. Sinex instantly clears mucus in everyday stuffy little noses with a gentle, ultra-fine mist designed for kids. Just Sinex? Breathe. Her stuffy nose is gone for now. And so is she.
Sinex Children's Saline. Sinex, breathe. Use as directed, keep out of reach of children.
Les Olson IT is now a Ricoh Graphic Arts and Production Systems dealer. Ricoh chose Les Olson because of our reputation for superior service and national recognition. Les Olson IT chose Ricoh Graphics because they're the best value compared to other commercial-grade printers. Ricoh excels in high volume, high speed, high resolution, and offers an exciting fifth color. Learn more at lesolson.com.
Les Olson IT.
Watch parties aren't what they used to be.
Well, Welcome to today's matinee.
Ever since we got Xfinity, my little sister and her friends can easily stream all their favorite stuff.
We'll start with 2 episodes of Top Chef, then Chopped.
When I was a kid, we'd worry about buffering. Now they just worry about what's on the charcuterie board.
Enjoy these fine meats and cheeses.
These are just cut up hot dogs and spray cheese.
Indeed.
The best way to stream your favorites is on the Xfinity 10G network. Now through September 21st, get gig internet on the Xfinity 10G network made for streaming for $25 a month for 2 years when you add Xfinity Mobile. There's no annual contract and get Wi-Fi equipment included. Plus, add Now TV with Peacock Premium, a $5.99 a month value included at no extra cost for just $20 a month. Switch today. Requires paperless billing and autopay with stored bank account. Restrictions apply. Taxes and fees extra. Xfinity Mobile and Now TV require Xfinity Internet. After promo, regular rates apply to internet service and Wi-Fi equipment. Actual speeds vary. Stream Top Chef on Peacock.
If you want a heating and air company that uses third-party verification of their work, that is one of the highest rated on both Google and Yelp, then call At Your Service Pros at 801-YOUR-PRO.
Join KSL News Radio's Jeff Kaplan on Thursday from 4 till 8 at the Mill Creek Business Market at Mill Creek Common. Join over 40 local businesses at the Mill Creek Business Market and enjoy fresh cut flowers, haircuts, Thai food, skincare products, henna tattoos, jewelry, dog treats and toys, boba, and more. There'll be skating, food trucks, and free twisted sugar drinks and cookies for the first 100 attendees, courtesy of U.S. Bank. It's KSL in your community in Mill Creek with KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dale Spalding. First, Senator Mitt Romney says he's not running for re-election, and younger folks seem to be on board. Second, a Salt Lake City man is accused of stabbing and killing a dog. He claims it was in self-defense. Third, Salt Lake City leaders will turn Main Street into an urban playground, including golf, yoga, and a silent disco party. Right now, it's mostly clear at 75 in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
As always, we're continuing to follow the economic trends. Inflation continues to impact all of us. So what do the latest inflation numbers tell us? How could they impact the Federal Reserve's decisions through the rest of the year? Whenever we're trying to make sense of the dollars and cents and all the numbers, we go to the specialist, Jeff Cox, ultimate thinker on this. He's the economics editor for CNBC.com. And Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Boyd. Always great to chat with you on these economic times.
Hey, we've made it past Labor Day, and we got some new economic news. So break down the numbers for us.
Well, we got some big inflation numbers this week. The Consumer Price Index, which is probably the most widely followed measure of inflation. Well, we saw kind of a mixed bag there. On the headline, rose 0.6%. But that was the biggest monthly gain of this year, and actually going back, I think, till about last summer or so. So that was fairly significant. Core, though, which of course strips out food and energy, because who needs those things to live? The increase was considerably less than that on a monthly basis. Although the numbers are still high year over year. I think 4.3% is the number. The core CPI was up from a year over year basis. So and the headline was up 3.7%. So both of those are still well ahead of where the Fed would want. Today we got the Producer Price Index, which is a little bit more arcane of a measure, but basically what it is, it used to be called the Wholesale Price Index, and it just basically means what producers get for their goods and services. Increased 0.7% in August, which was far more than expected. That was the biggest monthly gain since June 2022. So that tells you that there's still some pipeline pressures. And the core, again, was much lower. It was only 0.2%, 2.1% year over year. All these inflation numbers, especially the headline numbers, were pushed by the big spike in gas prices over the past month. If you strip them out, it doesn't look quite as bad. And the most important thing, I guess, is market reaction to all of this. The market took it pretty well in stride. It looked at it as pretty benign set of reports, and of course, we're in a big market rally today.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, and I always love your framing of very important of who needs food and energy. So we shouldn't include those, and we won't even get to the super core numbers because that's just fantasy land.
Yeah, forget about it. Yeah.
So I want to look forward to what this might mean in terms of those interest rates and what the Federal Reserve might do. Really interesting. Last week we had the president and CEO of the San Francisco Fed, Mary Daly, was actually in town, came in studio with us. We had a delightful conversation. And she talked about this idea of, you kind of have the tap on the brake or push on the gas. And she said, living in the Midwest, sometimes you just need to coast. Are we in that space with the Fed? What are you watching?
I like that metaphor. I think that seems to be what we can expect from here. As far as market pricing goes, in the markets are pricing in virtual certainty that we're not going to see the Fed do anything next week. In fact, we have like 97% chance according to the CME gauge of this stuff. And the traders have also sharply decelerated their expectations for an additional rate hike. We're down today to about a 33% chance of the Fed hiking at all further down the road. And, of course, the market starts pricing in rate cuts as we get into next year. So that's what's got investors in such a good mood. I think that, when these things usually get, when the market sort of tilts over to really sharply to one side as far as sentiment goes, Chair Jay Powell sort of feels like it's his duty to go out and sort of temper those expectations. So I think if the market gets too riled up about a dovish Fed, you could see Powell next week come out in the press conference and say, hey, you guys might want to tap the brakes on that, because we're still data dependent. And if the inflation numbers take a turn in the other direction, we'll start hiking again.
Yeah, fascinating. And let's look at, obviously, the energy cost, the spike there. Is a big one that every American is feeling across the board. As you look at that, obviously there's been production cuts in terms of Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. What else are you seeing or sensing there? Is there any path towards some easing in that space?
It doesn't appear that way. I mean, the gravitational pull right now for energy seems to be higher, and the market has been extremely sensitive to energy prices lately, as we're kind of hovering around that $90 a barrel level. I think that it's hard to tell right now exactly where what the market wants to see, but it appears to be focusing more on what the Fed's doing than what oil is doing for the moment. But we're actually over $90 a barrel on crude today. So that's an interesting point to eclipse, and it's interesting that the market's still higher on that. But it doesn't feel like there's any real reason to think about oil coming down sharply anytime soon with stockpiles and with productions where they are. So that's going to be an important thing to keep our eye on for sure.
All right. And as we move into the fall, what else are you keeping your eye on? What else should we be thinking about?
Well, we're going to start to, we're a lot of interesting things happening in the market right now. We'll start to see, we'll get a little bit better of a look into profits, earnings in a couple of weeks. So that's always an important thing. It's going to be wild to kind of see where big tech goes from here. Everybody's watching this IPO today, and that's been interesting to see. Whether the market is the ARM IPO, whether the market's going to be accepting of those kind of things. Will show some enthusiasm for riskier kind of stuff. I do think, again, once this Fed meeting passed, market will watch very closely to see to be listening to that kind of Fed speak to hear what they'll be talking about. And then, of course, we've got a potential government shutdown looming. We've got a presidential race that's going to start to heat up more and more as we get through the end of the last 4 months of the year here. So I think there'll be a lot of political risk that'll start to get introduced to the market. And then, just always those little exogenous events that come along and can give the market a jolt at any time.
What could possibly go wrong? Is that what you're telling us today, Jeff?
Yeah.
And it is interesting as you look at all of those factors, including the political component and how that starts to play in and what might influence the market there. The market risks, the political risks, I think, are always interesting. Just in our last minute, give us just a quick snapshot into the jobs numbers and how that's kind of impacting everything as well.
Well, the jobs numbers are starting to decelerate. The jobs market is starting to get a little looser. I think that when at the Fed meeting next week, it will be interesting because they will be releasing the dot plot plus their updates to the summary of economic projections, and that will be where they see unemployment heading. I think it's, you talk about gravitational pull. The gravitational pull for the jobs market right now is lower. I think we'll start to see those numbers move considerably lower. That unemployment rate start to edge up. Of course, the last time we saw the unemployment rate went up for the right reason, because we're seeing more people coming into the labor force. But if that continues, that unemployment rate is going to keep climbing higher. Ironically, that's also something that's good for the Fed. They would be willing to tolerate a couple extra points of increase on the unemployment rate if it means that it's because people are coming off the sidelines and into the workforce. But an important thing to watch as well when you ask about what are you going to be looking for? Looking for recession indicators as well, because I don't think that we're out of the woods as far as recession goes yet.
All right. Jeff Cox, as always, economics editor for CNBC. Appreciate your perspective. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Great talking to you, Boyd. Have a great day.
We'll be right back. Hour number 2, Inside Sources.
FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen at home on any smart speaker and in your car at 102.7 FM. This is KSL News Radio, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dale Spalding. KSL's top story this hour. Multiple agencies overseeing the Great Salt Lake want any mineral extracting newcomers to put all the water they use back into the lake instead of evaporating it. KSL News Radio's Adam Small has details.
Many existing companies on the Great Salt Lake typically use evaporation pools to separate the water from the salt, but now the Division of Water Quality and the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands want any newcomers to use advanced technology to take the minerals out, then shoot the water back into the lake. DAQ Director John Mackey says this could save a ton of much-needed water.
Those are not quantities that you can make up.
Mackey says mineral extraction by evaporation costs the lake hundreds of thousands of acre-feet every year. A 14-year-old is in critical condition after he was hit on his bike this morning in Heber. KSL News Radio's Becky Bruce reports.
Police say the boy was riding his bike at the intersection of 500 East and 1200 South at 8 o'clock this morning when a work van crashed into him. They say the teen was in the crosswalk at school and it was flashing at the time of the accident. He was taken to Utah Valley Hospital and is in critical but stable condition.
The driver of the van was cited for failing to yield. Hunter Biden has been indicted on federal firearms charges. A federal indictment filed in Delaware says Biden lied about his drug use when he bought a firearm in 2018 while struggling with addiction to crack cocaine. Thursday's indictment comes as congressional Republicans pursue an impeachment inquiry into the Democratic president, in large part over Hunter Biden's business dealings. Your money at this moment, the Dow up 331 points and NASDAQ up as well at 112 points. Coming up, beautiful fall weather to end the work week. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 2:01.
Early mornings can be hard enough, just getting yourself going.
We try to make it a little easier with news and weather from comfortable, trusted anchors and reporters.
Join us on Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9
on KSL News Radio.
At Scheels, we know good things happen when preparation meets opportunity, which means during the season, the only element of the hunt we can actually control is the work we put in and the gear we trust. So stop by the Scheels sale event September 9th through the 17th and save on brands you can trust, like Sitka, Lucky Duck, Benelli, and select Scheels Outfitters gear. Our Scheels experts are ready to prepare you for success on your next upland and waterfowl adventure. Scheels, earn your moment.
Happy 62nd birthday, Granddad.
Thanks, sweetheart.
I got you this.
A mug. Oh, thank you. What does it say? Beware. If you are 60 or older, you may be at increased risk of hospitalization from RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, compared to adults younger than 60.
Not all dangers come with warning labels. Talk to your pharmacist or doctor about getting vaccinated against RSV today. Learn more at bewareofrsv.com. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Hey, Derek Overstreet here from the New Millennium Group, financial advisors in Utah. You know, I've been helping people retire in the state of Utah for the last 20 years. The way we do that is we actually find out what is important to you. We create a step-by-step plan that takes into consideration your income, your debt, whether you want money from real estate, stock market, annuities, life insurance, whatever. If you want to deal with professionals, people that are fiduciaries and have a legal responsibility and obligation to do what's in your best interest, give my team a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Or go to my website, utahsfinancialplanner.com. If you'd like to retire 3 to 5 years before you thought it was possible, give my team a call right now. 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
Crews are still working this injury accident in the Syracuse area of Davis County. Antelope Drive at 3300 West. Salt Lake County Valley Freeway traffic rolling along and still looking good. With over 30-plus specialties and multiple locations across Utah, Revere has you covered for all your health needs. Revere Health, your partner in health, your partner for life. Online at reverehealth.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny skies through the weekend with highs in the low to mid 80s. Clouds move in next week with a chance of showers. Right now it's 76 and mostly clear. I'm Dale Spalding on KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As we continue to march our way through September, we'll continue to follow the fake fight and false choice happening in the United States Congress as it comes to funding the government, which we know it comes every year. 30th of September always comes. October 1st always comes. So we have the shutdown showdown, and the question, beyond all the headlines, is this all just a distraction from the real problem facing the country? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
So regardless of how the current funding fight ends, again, with Congress not doing one of the few duties it has as outlined in the Constitution, both sides are going to declare some sort of victory. They'll get whatever it is, a continuing resolution. I'm predicting it will be a continuing resolution that goes until December 14th specifically. So it's important for us to kind of think again in terms of what is actually going on. And if we can get past the unserious fake fight, can Congress actually get serious about the nation's fiscal future? And can we deal with the real issues that are going on? And always happy to have back on the show Romina Baccia, Director of Budget and Entitlement Policy at the Cato Institute. And Romina, you've been one who has been sounding the alarm on this for a long time in terms of, look, this is a distraction from some much bigger issues in government.
It is, and especially this time. I do think that legislators have some legitimate grievances when it comes to how these funding bills are being handled. For one, there was an agreement that Congress made to raise the debt limit just back in early June, and the Senate spending bills significantly violate that agreement. They are plussed up spending bills, chock full of emergency spending, and of course there's also plenty of earmarks, even though both sides do seem to appreciate those again. Overall, the spending levels are just simply too high, and then President Biden has also asked for an additional emergency spending bill with more money for Ukraine and also some domestic disasters, all of which just adds up and undermines the goals of the debt limit that Congress agreed to. But in the bigger picture, no matter how this ultimate shutdown threat ends and what type of spending bill Congress will agree on, it won't get us any closer to resolving the fiscal crisis that continues to brew very quickly, with government spending growing faster than the economy, driven by health care and retirement programs.
Yeah, and so let's dig into some of that, because I agree that the Senate clearly just blew past any kind of agreement that was made as part of the debt ceiling being raised earlier this year, and now we end up with this idea of the continuing resolution. And as you pointed out, it sounds like, everything will just stay the same. We'll just stay at our current levels of spending. But as you pointed out, Romina, it's always a plus. It's always plussed up with emergency spending, plussed up with, whatever the president wants and what someone else wants and earmarks. That's how you get $32 trillion in debt. One of the things that you pointed out in your piece in Reason is talking about the real critical pieces of this, the drivers, Social Security and Medicare.
Yes, and this is what Congress doesn't want to talk about. It started with the State of the Union when the president basically tried to put everyone on record against any benefit changes to Social Security and Medicare, and Republicans fell right in line. And I think both sides are feeling the pressure from grassroots groups to maintain and continue to grow these entitlement benefits, even though it is completely unaffordable. These programs are extremely unsustainable. The Treasury Department puts out a report every year detailing the long-term unfunded obligations, so the promises, spending promises that the government has made versus the revenues that Treasury predicts the government will be able to collect over the long term. They consider 75 years, and it's very telling that of the $85 trillion, a massive number, multiple times the size of our economy, about 3 times, of that $85 trillion in unfunded obligations, 95% are due to Medicare and Social Security. And we just simply cannot address or avoid a debt crisis in the future if we don't address these giant programs.
Yeah, and it just doesn't seem like anyone's serious about having that conversation. It's always been kind of the third rail in politics that you don't touch those. And yet, if we don't touch those, ultimately, this doesn't end well for the very people who depend on those programs the most.
You're absolutely right. Both Medicare and Social Security are projected to see their trust funds exhausted before the next 10 years are over. And for anyone in or near retirement, 8, 9, 10 years when those programs will run out of funds and potentially automatic benefit cuts could hit is not that far away. So Congress ought to be addressing these programs sooner rather than later. But I do understand the political pressure, especially with this election year looming, that Congress doesn't want to touch these programs. But then I say, okay, recognize that and delegate that responsibility to a group of independent experts and empower them to make the changes that need to be made, but that Congress is unable to make.
Absolutely. And I think as we look at how that plays out moving forward, just give us some sense of what that conversation could look like or should look like in terms of reforming Social Security and Medicare.
There is some interest on both sides of the aisle. There's a bipartisan group in Congress, the Bipartisan Fiscal Forum, that has endorsed the idea of a fiscal commission. And I'm hearing that the House Budget Committee will introduce a budget proposal, I believe, next week, where they will also call for a fiscal commission to reform Medicare and Social Security. And I think that objective experts that aren't concerned about being elected and therefore can think in the bigger picture about these issues and what's best for the country and the nation as a whole, they will identify certain changes, including reducing benefits for higher income earners, likely making some adjustments to the eligibility age, reflecting the fact that Americans are living about 20 years longer than when these programs were first put in place, and yet those eligibility ages haven't changed, and also looking at the automatic growth factor in those programs. We don't necessarily need to make any benefit cuts, but we need to slow the growth in the benefits that are growing faster than the economy and faster than the incomes of the workers who are asked to pay for these. Because we always have to keep in mind that these are not pre-funded programs. Americans did not save for Social Security. They did pay taxes, but as soon as the government collects them, they go straight out the door to pay for the benefits of other people.
Fascinating stuff. And just give me one last thing, Romina, that you're watching as September kind of grinds its way along. We're hard to believe we're already to the midpoint. Anything on the horizon, any conversations that you're hearing about that might indicate where we might have some movement?
I think that Speaker McCarthy has a good sense of his conference, and that Republicans, especially in the minority, do feel that they want to have a fight. They want to articulate their priorities. They want to show up for their constituents. And right now, the only real deadline for them to do so is the spending fight, and therefore the potential government shutdown. And so we're seeing things introduced like the impeachment process, as well as now the House saying that they will actually introduce a budget that lawmakers can debate. I think these are all signs pointing to Speaker McCarthy trying to find a solution, a compromise solution to keep the government funded, avoid a potentially unnecessary and somewhat costly government shutdown that, eventually the government will get funded. So there's a real question of what Republicans hope to achieve there. But I do think it's important to debate, how much the government should be spending, given that we have such high deficits. And I would also like to see more restraints put on emergency spending and overall a greater acknowledgement that Congress abuses that category regularly just to evade spending limits, not really to address emergencies.
Yeah, absolutely. The emergency word has become one that people up and down government, from the federal government down to the state and local level, have started to use as a way to go around the system and the process and spend what they want on a whole host of things. As always, Romina Baccia, Director of Budget and Entitlement Policy at the Cato Institute. Fantastic insight, important as we continue to march our way through September. Romina, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Romina always has such good perspective, and I love the fact that she's zeroing in on, look, folks, you can have all the other chatter, you can have all the other fake fights and false choices and political posturing out there, but if we do not deal with Social Security and Medicare, all the rest of it is window dressing. And so we have to we'll talk a lot about shutdown showdowns, we'll talk about funding the government. All that's going to happen one way or another, but if we don't get to the real conversation, the rest of this is just a massive distraction.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. 2024 is going to be wild.
While I'm not running for re-election, I'm not retiring from the fight.
The race for the White House, all 4 Utah House seats up for grabs. And now, an open Senate seat?
Frankly, it's time for a new generation of leaders.
Listen all this week for the reaction, the fallout, and the road ahead. It will be your voice, your vote that decides. And we'll have you covered on KSL News Radio.
As most of you know, on my SOTA weight loss journey, SOTA stands for state-of-the-art weight loss. I'm in this maintenance mode. I lost 37 pounds in the first 90 days. Fell off. The process works. The coaching works. The insight works. Now I'm in this maintenance mode, and it's amazing. My body has learned how to use food as fuel. I'm getting the right nutrition in the right way at the right time. I have this awesome coach that checks in with me on a regular basis. I can text anytime I want. If I have questions or if I feel like I'm a little off maybe on my energy or maybe a pound goes one way or the other, it gives you a great opportunity to stay on path, because that's the ultimate test. Anybody can do it for a day or a week or even a couple of months. The test is, can you have a lifestyle? Can you have a lifetime pursuit of health and wellness? And that's what SOTA weight loss is all about. I'm not the only one achieving great results, thousands across the country, and you can do it too. As I always say, when it comes to your SOTA weight loss journey, there's no time to lose. There's only time to win. So start winning. Check it out at SOTAweightloss.com. It's SOTAweightloss.com.
Ever feel like your insurance company doesn't know you?
Insurance Corporation will issue generic plans where agricultural activities occur.
Only a human can visit your farm or ranch to know what you need.
Find out why Farm Bureau Financial Services has been the #1 ag insurer for 25 years. It's your future. Let's protect it. Talk to an agent today or visit fbfs.com/protect. #1 ag insurer across our territory. 1996 to 2021 SNL P&C Group Direct Written Premium.
Is shopping for medical supplies online leaving you feeling intimidated and overwhelmed? Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent with Alpine Home Medical. I want to share a real customer story with you.
The moment I walked into Alpine, I felt cared for.
They pulled me into a private room, and the Alpine professional happily set up my CPAP machine, explaining everything I needed to know. The service didn't stop there. After I went home, Alpine called me a week later just to check on me. These guys really are the experts. Before Alpine, I was so stressed trying to navigate what I needed online by myself, but all the stress went away when I went to their store. They really do deserve 5 stars.
We know when you walk through our doors, you deserve to be cared for. Stop by any of our 11 locations and discover the Alpine Home Medical difference. When you need assistance, we're here for you.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
AlpineHomeMedical.com.
Attention taxpayers, ready for some bad news? With $80 billion in new funding from Congress, the IRS has launched their most aggressive hiring campaign ever to ramp up enforcement. If you're ignoring your taxes, don't delay another minute because your paycheck, your bank account, even your home or business could already be at risk. Now, here's the good news. Optima Tax Relief, America's #1 tax relief firm, can get to work immediately, helping to protect you from the IRS. A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, their tax attorneys and licensed professionals are experts at resolving tax problems. Let them help determine if you qualify for the Fresh Start Initiative or other powerful IRS tax assistance programs. Take control. Call Optima Tax Relief now for a free consultation.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
It's the fall sales event at Murdoch Hyundai. Right now, receive 2.99% for 5 years on Santa Fe or Tucson. At Murdoch Hyundai in Logan, Linden, and Murray. Or online at MurdochHyundai.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dale Spalding. First, adoption specialist Lisa Weiss says the Weber County Animal Shelter is still overcrowded with dogs and is offering free adoptions until September 26th. Second, Salt Lake City Mayor Aaron Mendenhall says this Main Street's Open Streets event could become a permanent feature downtown in the next few years. Third, Hunter Biden has been indicted on 3 federal firearms charges. Right now, it's 77 and mostly clear in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Nikki Haley had a political moment on the debate stage. The question, of course, is always, can you take a moment, turn it into a movement, some upward bounce in the polls, and then can you turn it into something that is sustainable? Nikki Haley has been rising in popularity among GOP voters, particularly in New Hampshire. But the interesting thing is that a lot of voters are just convinced the former president is going to be the nominee. And so that kind of changes the dynamic of how you listen to everyone else. Lisa Kaczynski is the author of the Massachusetts Playbook for Politico, always gives us fantastic insight. And loved your piece, Lisa, in Politico, talking about Nikki Haley getting a bounce. She had a really good moment, but it might not be for the presidency. Tell us about it.
Yeah, and hey, thanks for having me on again. It's always great to be here. Basically, what you're seeing happen in New Hampshire right now is that this is a state, early primary state, where folks, Republicans, independents, spend a ton of time going to town halls, vetting presidential candidates. There was a lot of interest in Nikki Haley after that first debate. She came through last week for a couple-day swing, held a trio of town halls, and across every single one of them, voter after voter was like, we saw you in the debate. We like what you had to say. We want to hear more. We're really interested in you. She got a little bit of a bump in polls after she'd been, really kind of in the back of the pack in New Hampshire for a while, despite putting quite a bit of effort into the state. But the problem is that even as much as some folks like her in New Hampshire, and it's actually hard to find a voter there who doesn't, at least like her or respect what she did at the UN, they're starting to worry that they're vetting candidates, especially Nikki Haley right now, is kind of bearing the brunt of this, to potentially be the second person on the GOP ticket because Trump is so far ahead.
Yeah, and that's always such an interesting dynamic. You pointed this out in your piece that her rise has been blunted by that downward force of everyone running behind the former president. And to me, it's always in these, and you've seen this over and over again in your experience, that part of what you have to do as a candidate is you have to create this visual so people can say, oh, I can see you in the first chair, not just as the vice president, but they have to be able to actually see you in whatever office you're running for. Does there seem to be a path or any appetite there in New Hampshire in particular for a Nikki Haley or a Tim Scott or anyone else? Is anyone creating that visual or that feeling that, hey, there's at least a chance?
Yeah, I mean, I think that voters in New Hampshire, and let me say that this is also voters who are not Trump supporters for the most part, or in some cases are folks who are open to voting Trump, or voting for Trump again, but are not like his diehard supporters that are with him, 100% to the end of the line. The voters that we're talking about in this scenario are, the folks who are looking at shopping around and in some cases very much do not want to vote for Donald Trump again. And it's among those that you really do see the comments that Haley would make a great, a great president. Vivek Ramaswamy is really intriguing people right now. Tim Scott, to a bit as well. And so they want to. They can see these people as leaders. And I think what you saw on the debate stage was Nikki Haley, these voters being really kind of asserting herself and showing that fire that she doesn't always necessarily show in her campaign trail persona. And so when they saw that on the debate stage, they're like, that's the leader I've been looking for. But yet you're still watching her 20, 30 points behind Trump in these polls. And the polls aren't everything, but New Hampshire voters aren't blind to them either.
Yeah, and New Hampshire voters are always so engaged in the process that it tends to be a little closer there in New Hampshire in terms of being accurate. A lot of places in the country, polling's completely off the rails. New Hampshire tends to be a little more consistent because they are so engaged. One of the other things you pointed out in your piece that I thought was interesting was New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu, who continues to insist that the former president won't be the GOP nominee, and that the voters are still looking around. What else do you see in terms of is there that window? What else are you hearing or seeing on the ground there in terms of how people might be saying, okay, it's likely him, but I'm still willing to look elsewhere?
Yeah, a good chunk of voters are willing to look elsewhere, even in some cases folks who are still open to Trump. I mean, one of the women, Republican women that I talked to for the story, said, yeah, I like Trump. I'm open to voting for him again, but I also like Nikki Haley. I also like X, Y, Z. And, so remember that for the 40 to 50 some odd percent of support that Trump has in polls in New Hampshire, that means the other 50 to 60% is people who are willing to look around. And, New Hampshire is going to keep doing this. This is what New Hampshire voters pride themselves on, is going to a town hall for every candidate, asking them questions, looking them in the eye. So they're going to continue to expect these candidates to come here and do this. And it was with a really great reluctance that people were telling me that, we might have to consider these people that we really like for VP. We don't want to. We're just being realistic about the situation.
Great stuff as always. Lisa Kaczynski is the author of the Massachusetts Playbook for Politico. Lisa, as always, thanks for joining us. Great insight. We look forward to having you back soon.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
All right. That's Lisa Kaczynski, the author of the Massachusetts Playbook for Politico. And one of the other things that Lisa pointed out in her piece, and this kind of goes back to Governor Sununu, saying, look, the former president has a big lead in terms of those polls, but it's not a locked-in lead. In other words, he's not really getting way above 50%, and the 50% is even a little bit soft in terms of who's really hardcore committed to the former president. So what Chris Sununu is saying is that, look, these other candidates are going to have their moments where they can create space for that possibility where people can say, yep, I can see that person in the Oval Office. I can see that person speaking to the nation. I can see that person on the world stage. And that's really what you're trying to do with any candidate in any race, is to just create this visual of, I can see them as my senator, for example. I can see them as my representative, my governor, my mayor. And that's the real test. I think Nikki Haley took a big jump in that space during the last Republican debate for the nomination last month in Milwaukee. And coming up here just 13 days away, they'll do it all over again in a really important forum. that will create a really important visual. The debate will be held at the Ronald Reagan Library. It is majestic. It is big. You've got Air Force One behind where the speakers are going to be, where the candidates will be. And so it will be, if anyone wants to have a real Reagan-esque moment, this is it. And so I think the preparation for the upcoming debate is going to be so important to what Lisa just shared with us of, can you create a visual, not as yourself as a vice president candidate, but as a candidate for the highest office. Can people see you in that space? Can you command the room? Can you command the camera? Can you command the interaction with the moderator of the debate? Can you command the stage with others on it, your competitors who are vying for the same position? And that differentiation will be equally critical. Again, a lot of these candidates are very similar on a lot of the issues, so not a lot of distinction there. So how do you differentiate? How do you showcase and create that visual of, you can see me as your president? That's the ultimate test. I have always told candidates, the moment someone says, I can see you as my representative, my governor, you could be my president, that's when the game really changes. And that's what everyone's going to be trying to do in New Hampshire, in Iowa, South Carolina, and on the debate stage coming up on the 27th of this month down at the Ronald Reagan Library. All of the Republican candidates running for the nomination in 2024 will be trying to do exactly that. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news, but don't go anywhere. Much more Inside Sources coming up on KSL News Radio.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dale Spalding. KSL's top story this hour. NFL players say they prefer to play on natural grass rather than artificial turf. Turf is blamed for the season-ending injury to New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers on Monday night. Brad Mielke with ABC's Start Here says soccer's governing body required that real grass be used for the 2026 World Cup.
When FIFA awarded the next World Cup to the U.S., it did so on one condition. They said every game has to be played on natural grass. In 2026, even stadiums that use artificial turf will truck in brand new grass fields for this one-month tournament.
The NFL insists that cleats worn by players can also affect mobility, but the Players Association is calling for all fields to be switched back to grass. Officials at the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food are warning livestock purchasers of a rise in scams. The scams could be connected to the increase in cattle prices. They are the highest they've been since 2015. They say buyers should be cautious and always purchase from a reputable auction and never send partial payment before seeing the animal in person. Better news at the Weber County Animal Shelter after a report that the shelter had 21 more dogs than it had kennel space for and was considering euthanizing some if they were not adopted. The kennel says it now only has 3 dogs too many. Adoption specialist Lisa Weiss says the shelter still is overcrowded with dogs and is offering free adoptions until September 26th. Coke's latest mystery flavor was created by artificial intelligence. The Coca-Cola Y3000 flavor is supposed to taste like the future. Coke used AI to design the package and flavor notes. The can prominently reads, co-created with AI. Your money at this moment, the Dow is up 331 points and NASDAQ is up 112 points. Coming up, gorgeous fall weather to end your work week. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Hi, this is Doug Wright, and there are good things in the air. You can feel it, you can see it, you can experience it. Football, the kids are back in school. It's beginning to cool off a little bit. Fall is in the air, and a great place to go this fall for the best meal you've ever had. It's Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Now let's talk about going up to the mountains where the leaves are just beginning to turn. It's going to be gorgeous. And at Hotel Park City, there's a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse waiting for you. So many things are going on in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, and there's a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse downtown for you as well at 275 South West Temple. That steak that you've been longing for, cooked to perfection, the perfect temperature, the side dishes, the desserts. They're at both locations of Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. So call and make your reservations now. When Dee and I ate there the other night, it was so delicious, so good. That first bite, you're going to love it at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
Swing a loop and ride for excitement at Beatty Days 2023, Friday, October 27th through the 30th. It's old-fashioned fun with cowboy shootouts, the ICS chili cook-off, 2K, 5K race, live music, bed races, a desert art show, classic car show, cornhole toss, model railroads, vendors, contests, and a pet parade. Head for Beatty Days in Nevada, October 27th through the 30th, and discover small-town hospitality at its best. Visit BeattyNevada.org.
Transform your outdated kitchen with half-price granite. Replace your entire kitchen with beautiful and affordable options with granite for only $2,500. Yeah, $2,500. Not interested in countertops? No worries. Half-price granite is now stocked with gorgeous cabinets and flooring options to choose from. You're sure to find something you love. Call 801-486-1700. 801-486-1700. Half-price granite. Online at halfpricegranite.com. Half-price granite. Affordable luxury.
At Fisher Investments, we do things differently, and other money managers don't understand why.
Because our way works great for us.
But it may not work for your clients. That's why Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, obligated to put clients first. It's the highest standard for a financial advisor.
So, what do you provide? Cookie-cutter portfolios like the rest of us?
No cookie-cutter portfolios here. Fisher Investments tailors portfolios to meet each client's goals and needs.
But you do sell investments that earn you high commissions, right? And make commissions when you make trades for your clients?
No, Fisher Investments doesn't sell any commission investment products, and we never earn commissions on trades.
So what's in it for you?
Fisher Investments fees are structured so we do better when our clients do better. When it comes to helping clients achieve a comfortable retirement, we're clearly different. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments, clearly different money management.
Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
Found your dream house, but not your dream rate? Make your purchase with a home loan from Cypress Credit Union. Refinance within 12 months if rates drop, and Cypress Credit Union will take care of the refinancing fees.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
Right now, we have a good drive on your Valley freeways. No accidents or delays there. But crews have responded to a crash with possible injuries 6200 south at 40th West. The Utah RV Super Show at Mountain America Expo Center in Sandy, September 14th through 17th. Get information and discount passes at UtahRVSupershow.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny skies through the weekend with highs in the low to mid 80s. Clouds move in next week with a chance of showers. Right now it's 77 and mostly clear. I'm Dale Spalding, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The United States is moving forward with a deal to unfreeze $6 billion in Iranian assets in exchange for the release of U.S. hostages. The administration says the money will be used for humanitarian purposes. But Iran is saying something completely different. So we want to break this down just a little bit. There's been a lot of back and forth. We've talked about it on this program. $6 billion is a lot of money to a regime like that in Iran. And what this means and the precedent that it sets, the impact it could have on Americans traveling abroad, the idea that this really sets a price tag on the life of a U.S. citizen, the challenges it makes for other hostages being held around the world or being detained illegally, unlawfully in places like Russia and North Korea, and the fact that we also traded in addition to unfreezing $6 billion in Iranian assets, 5 Iranian prisoners So the swap seems very interesting. And so we wanted to break this down just a little bit because we continue to get more information. Really interesting. NBC's Lester Holt had a conversation with the Iranian president, Raisi, and the president told Lester Holt, as it relates to this money that the U.S. is saying can only be used for humanitarian purposes, the Iranian leader said, we'll do with it whatever we want.
This money belongs to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and naturally, we will decide, the Islamic Republic of Iran will decide to spend it wherever we need it.
So if I hear you clearly, that it will be used for more than humanitarian purposes in your view?
Humanitarian means whatever the Iranian people needs. So this money will be budgeted for those needs. And the needs of the Iranian people will be decided and determined by the Iranian government.
So that's a real contrary point of view to what the administration has been saying over the last several weeks. A lot of criticism about this deal, $6 billion release from frozen assets, and in the exchange for, of course, some very important United States citizens who have been detained, who've been in some pretty horrific prison conditions, and hopefully will be back on U.S. soil soon. But there's a lot of criticism going on because of how this has gone down and what it actually will mean. And clearly, the Iranian president says that he gets to decide. The government gets to decide, and humanitarian means whatever the Iranian people need. Now, during a White House press briefing yesterday, John Kirby from the National Security Council, he got asked very specifically about President Raisi's comments and how the United States plans to oversee the funds. Here's a very interesting exchange.
President Raisi says it's up to them how they use the money.
He's wrong.
How are you going to guarantee that? Because once money's fungible. So once it's released.
No, man. It's not fungible. He's just wrong. He's just flat out wrong. The way this deal's arranged is that the $6 billion, which is Iranian money, will go to a Qatari bank, Qatari National Bank. The Iranians can request withdrawals for it for humanitarian purposes, and the Qataris and it will be and us, we will have oversight, sufficient oversight, into the request itself to validate the request, and then to deliver funds appropriate to that request. The money will then go to qualified vendors to purchase and deliver the food, the medical supplies into Iran. So it will go directly to aid organizations or appropriate relevant organizations inside Iran so that the Iranian people can benefit from it.
So it's a tough argument for John Kirby to make. Money is fungible, whether he says it is or not. It just is. Because even if the money does go through some sort of organization, aid organization, that just means that the money that the Iranian regime could spend on that, they can spend somewhere else. And so it is fungible. You can't really debate that. The oversight has never worked, never in the history of ever. That's my phrase for the week. It's just not happening. It hasn't happened in the past on these kinds of exchanges. Because it all gets mixed up in a government that we don't trust and we don't have a great relationship with anyway. So the ability to really track $6 billion in Iranian funds, I think that's a tough sell, in my view. We had on the show previously Behnam Bentaleblu from the Foundation for Defense Democracies, and he told me as we chatted that the money absolutely is fungible, and that Iran has a track record of breaking the law to get the cash to fund its bad behavior around the world.
Because money is fungible, even if there is no sanctions busting, even if there is no violation of the humanitarian accounts here, and trust me, the regime also has a track record of doing that as well. For instance, in places like Turkey, where there used to be other humanitarian lock provisions, Tehran would engage in dubious business practices like over-invoicing and hawala, of course, to get money that it could actually later on have as cash on hand to fund its proxies, its missiles, its drones, its nuclear program, and whatnot. And so even if you have, clear compliance, which is highly unlikely because the U.S. government has not even been able to articulate how it plans to monitor and defend be putting its drone proliferation, which already, that's Iran is aiding and abetting Russia's war against Ukraine through the provision of drones on steroids. And this is a regime that has been able to pinch pennies to pose a major asymmetric threat. And I would expect those asymmetric threats to unfortunately grow because of this.
That's some pretty sobering statistics and reality check, I think, from Benham, just talking about the fact that, look, this regime doesn't have a great track record of doing what they say. Looking at how that money moves around, the proxies, all the different hands that it goes through, the fact that they'll likely end up using that kind of money on things like proxy wars, nuclear, missiles, helping Russia, that doesn't help. It was also interesting yesterday during the press briefing, John Kirby was asked kind of the head-scratching question that was a little bit of a surprise for a lot of people. We had talked a lot about the fact that there would be the 5 United States citizens released and the $6 billion unfrozen of Iranian assets. But then there was this kind of drop-in of, and we're also releasing 5 Iranians in the process. John Kirby was asked about it.
But didn't they also get 5 Iranians?
They will get 5 Iranians as well. Yeah, Jackie.
Then why did we need to add $6 billion on top of that?
This is the deal that we were able to strike to secure the release of 5 Americans.
So a bit of a non-answer there from John Kirby. He's got a tough job, to be sure, especially on this one. I think this is difficult, but there's got to be a better answer than saying when the question is raised, they're releasing 5 United States citizens, we're releasing 5 Iranians. Why do we need to add $6 billion on top of that? And for John Kirby to simply say, that's the deal. That doesn't give us a lot of insight into what's really going on because that raises a lot of suspicion to me that is very problematic, that we're saying 5 for 5 plus $6 billion. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense in terms of how all of this plays out. Also interesting, John Kirby was asked a little later in the exchange that if the release of these funds would actually free up money that Iran is already using on those proxy wars, drones, and the nuclear program.
They've been participating in bad behavior for a long, long time, and we continue to put pressure on them in ways I would add that the previous administration did not do, particularly in terms of their nuclear and ballistic missile programs.
And then I want to round out with one last segment of my conversation with Benham Ben-Taleblu from the Foundation of Defense Democracies. Because he also told me that Iran gets a lot of its money from countries buying its oil, which is what the U.S. was worried about when it set up the current sanctions on Iran over a decade ago.
There's the idea of Iran being able to use its oil money to basically fund terrorism and those strategic programs that we talked about, nuclear, missile, and military. So it is irrelevant if it is American money or Iranian money in terms of the larger things that this would fund. It is relevant because you don't want to be directly paying for this, but this is the U.S. indirectly, paying for this. And what I mean by that is when the U.S. designed this sanctions architecture between 2010 and 2013 that would lock up Iranian oil revenues, its fear was not that American or European money would be funding terrorism or would be funding something else. It was that even revenues earned for Iran in places like India, China, South Korea, Japan that were still buying even lesser volumes of Iranian oil could still be used to fund this. So this argument that it is not American money and therefore we shouldn't care how it's spent is absolutely irrelevant, and it is ignorant of the way we have established in the past few years the sanctions architecture, because if you're the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism, you're going to be using any money to continue to engage in these behaviors.
I come away from yesterday's conversations with more concerns and more questions than clarity or answers with what has gone down in terms of this release of the U.S. hostages, $6 billion in Iranian assets unfrozen, along with 5 Iranians. And the dollars and cents don't make sense to me, and the precedent that it sets, I think, is dangerous for other bad actors around the world to see that this is how the U.S. is willing to play. I don't think that helps us from a national security standpoint or a safety standpoint. I also think it undermines our credibility with a lot of very important allies around the world who also have to be questioning what this will mean for them in the years ahead. All right, we'll step aside for one last break. When we come back, I'm going to go back to something that I am pretty certain you missed yesterday with all the conversations, all the chatter and clamor happening in our nation's capital. I want to go back to something that I think might have a bigger impact, potentially, on spending in Washington than any of the other conversations that everybody's chasing. We'll be right back.
They say you slow down as you get older, and it's true. But taking life a little slower here at Summit Vista has been incredibly rewarding. At my age, I know what I like, and it's all here. They call this a life plan community, and I'm liking the concept. I've always been a practical person, and now it's time to treat myself. At Summit Vista, I have a beautiful apartment. It's spacious and contemporary. It feels like me. I have all the independence I want, no more maintenance headaches, no more days spent cleaning. I eat delicious meals with my friends. The staff here feels like family. The socializing and amenities are endless. Frankly, anyone who says luxury living is overrated hasn't been to Summit Vista. I've rebooted my life, and I'm revisiting my younger self with the wisdom of an older woman. And I gotta tell you, feels pretty cool.
Experience retirement living at the top. Visit summitvista.com today.
Attention smart homeowners. You don't have to fall for flashy promises and companies that don't even prove their work. At Your Service Pros uses third-party verification software called MeasureQuick to ensure your new HVAC system is installed correctly. This ultimate game changer in the HVAC industry lets you, the homeowner, have proof of how your system was installed. At Your Service Pros utilizes our Bluetooth tools to upload all of your system's information into MeasureQuick. We rely on data-driven insights to properly commission, optimize, and fine-tune your HVAC system for peak performance, improving your family's comfort, lowering your utility bills, and extending the life of your HVAC system. With rebates and tax credits available totaling more than $7,500 on a dual fuel heating and cooling system, it is now more important than ever that your HVAC system be installed correctly. So call us today at 801-YOUR-PRO. That's 801-YOUR-PRO. Have the peace of mind of saving up to 50% on your new system and knowing it's installed correctly by calling 801-YOUR-PRO.
Imagine how inconvenient your life would be without power. No lights, no refrigeration, no heating or cooling, and no electronics. But with a Generac home standby generator, you'll have the power when you need it most. Generac generators automatically provide backup after sensing a power outage, so your life goes on uninterrupted. Schedule a free quote today with Genco Generators, your premier Generac service dealer in Utah. Call 801-295-0872 or online at gencogenerators.net.
Hey guys, are you over 30? Let's talk about testosterone and performance. Your testosterone can decline at an average of 1 to 2% a year after you turn 30. And Revive Men's Health have been experts at treating men with low testosterone and ED since 2011. We're the clinic guys come to when their current treatment isn't working. They have a complicated medical condition, or they're just not happy with their performance. We love what we do and the patients we care for. You can ask our patients. We did, and we have a 99% patient satisfaction rate this year. Our patients even tell us we're more affordable than their insurance deductibles and copays. Let's get to the bottom of your issues and fix them. That's what we do, and we do it really well. Book your T-Check and exam today. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or send us a private message at ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Some things are better together, like burgers and fries, movies and popcorn, and auto and home insurance. At Farm Bureau Financial Services, we'll help you bundle your auto and home coverage in one policy, saving you money. And if a storm hits and both are damaged, you'll pay a single deductible. Find an agent at fbfs.com/protect. It's your future. Let's protect it. Farm Bureau Property and Casualty Insurance Company, Western Agricultural Insurance Company.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dale Spalding. First, NFL players are complaining about artificial turf, the stuff blamed for ending New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers' upcoming season on Monday night. Second, officials at the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food are warning livestock purchasers of a rise in scams. Third, Hunter Biden has been indicted on federal firearms charges. Right now it's 78 and mostly clear in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, there's so many conversations coming out of our nation's capital, from the shutdown showdown and all of that that's taking place in terms of funding the government, what will happen over the next 15, 16 days that we have left in the month. We also have indictments going on with Hunter Biden. We have impeachment inquiry being launched in the House of Representatives. We have congressmen and senators retiring. We have presidents and potential presidents. There's just all kinds of things going on. And I think the most important potential impacts coming out of Washington, no one really paid attention to yesterday. But we did. We had Utah Representative Blake Moore on the phone with us from Washington, along with Representative Landsman, who is a Democrat from Ohio. And we talked to them about something that I think could be one of those game changers in Washington, D.C. We always talk about culture eating strategy for breakfast. Culture matters. And there's a culture in Washington around spending and programs that is just perpetual and ever growing. So yesterday on the show, we talked to these two representatives, one Democrat, one Republican, talking about something they have just launched, which is called the What Works Caucus. And the purpose of this caucus is to promote evidence-based, data-driven policymaking, a radical concept. I think it's one we need in our nation's capital. So we started by asking Representative Moore to just explain what is the What Works Caucus and what is it that they're trying to achieve.
We do a lot of programs, a lot of legislation that leverages and uses a lot of taxpayer money. We need to make sure that the work that we're doing, the programs, things that we're legislating are effective. We don't do that. So much work goes into building the legislation, and once it's implemented, we don't do enough good work to analyze and evaluate whether it's effective. That's what this really is focused on. And, there's so many good tools out there that aren't being leveraged by the public sector that exist in the private sector that makes their businesses more efficient. We need to incorporate more of that to know whether we are accomplishing what it's set out to do.
It's all about the data and the results. We have so many programs in this country, well-intended, many of them passed years and even decades ago, that we don't even measure if it's doing the right job, if it's accomplishing the goal that it was set out to achieve. But we just keep funding it, and usually we fund it at higher and higher levels as the year goes on. And so what this bipartisan What Works Caucus is out to prove is that, look, you can use data and the numbers to figure out what's working, and then you can make policy based on that. And I love that it's bipartisan. So Representative Landsman, as I mentioned, he's a Democrat from the state of Ohio. We asked him about changing the culture in Washington and how adding these kind of measures to legislation could actually change the game.
The goals will be, let's get an equal number of Democrats and Republicans working together on this to start to change the culture. The culture is going to take a while to change, but change the culture where people are starting to think about their own bills and saying, what is, to Blake's point, what's the theory of change? How are we going to measure impact, and how do we build that into the legislation so that we are seeing more and more bills being introduced that have that language included, and that people are starting to ask the question, because where I believe the majority of Americans are, they don't mind investments in people and folks that are struggling so long as it works. So long as it's having the intended impact. And for so many of these programs, we just don't know.
Yeah.
And that's true for all spending. All spending should be measured based on whether or not it's achieving the goal. So that's at least what I hope to achieve within the year is getting a good group of folks that are beginning to think differently about all of this spending.
All right, so this group comes together. They launch this What Works Caucus. Again, Representative Blake Moore from Utah, Greg Landsman, a Democrat from Ohio, Rudy Yakem, a Republican from Indiana, Brittany Peterson, a Democrat from Colorado. They're the initial group that are trying to ensure that federal taxpayer dollars are invested as effectively and efficiently and has produced the right results to have the right outcomes for children, for families, for communities across the country. Evidence-based, data data-driven. Every conversation in our nation's capital should include those words, evidence-based and data-driven policymaking. That's the way to do it. And this is not just some idea to cut big government, although I think there's a lot of cutting that should be done. But it's not just about cutting big government, it's about fixing broken government. Because there's so much waste, fraud, and abuse, we know that. But even beyond waste, fraud, and abuse, let's just get to effectiveness and results. Every business in America only continues when they deliver the right results. And the only way you can get to the right results is to measure what it is that you're doing. And if you measure what you're doing, you can see what you need to change, what you need to eliminate. Some of the most important decisions in a business are not about what to do. It's about what not to do or what to stop doing. Congress never stops doing anything. Once a program is begun, it is the closest thing to eternal on the face of the planet. They stay forever, often wasting billions and billions of taxpayer dollars, not producing the result that everybody wants. So no one's talking about this. I think it was one of the most important moments in our nation's capital yesterday, and that's why we're talking about it. One of our representatives here from the state of Utah is part of a bipartisan group, evidence-based, data-driven policymaking. Sounds radical. I think it brings the right results for the American people. Well, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. Thanks for joining us. I am Boyd Matheson. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen at home on any smart speaker and in your car at 102.7 FM. This is KSL News Radio, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good to be back. 3 o'clock at KSL.